Karna and Arjun fought against each other 3 times. Krishna was always very careful about Karna because he knew that the only person can who can kill Arjun is Karna. So he had this Ekagni weapon with him, which if he used it, it would kill him. Krishna knew about it. And that's why during the war, he sends Ghatotkach to fight Karna. If you calculate the score between Arjun and Karna, Arjun wins. I know there are many people who love Karna, but Karna had problem was he was very arrogant. Later on also, during the war, still Arjun was not fully engaging, especially with Bhishma. Vidur himself was known as Dharma. So Yudhishthir comes in. Yudhishthir could have said no. In fact, later on, both Bhim, Arjun, everybody accuses Yudhishthir that why did you accept it?
तो आज के पॉडकास्ट में आप सभी का स्वागत है। उम्मीद है आप सबका दिन अच्छा रहा होगा। तो सबसे पहले मैं अपने गेस्ट से चाहूंगा कि वो हमें अपने बारे में थोड़ा सा बताएं।
Okay, thank you, Mohit, for this podcast. First of all, I'd like to apologize because my Hindi is not very good, so I'll have to speak in English. So I once again apologize for that fact. A little bit about me. My name is Sudipta Bhawmik. I live in New Jersey, USA, and I am author, a writer, a playwright. I direct plays, I write plays, and we have a theater performance group. And besides that, also I do a lot of few other things. I'm a cartoonist, a blogger, and other stuff. And also uh, on my professional life, I'm an engineer by profession, and especially in the field of electronics and computer engineering area. So that's what my day job is. But my passion is literature, theater, performing arts, stuff like that.
सर आपने आपने अपनी बैचलर्स, मास्टर्स एंड पीएचडी आईआईटी खड़गपुर से की है।
Right, yeah. I did my bachelor's in electronics, master's, and PhD in computer science and engineering. And after that, I came to the United States to do job. And since then, I'm here.
ओके, तो कैन यू टेल अस कि व्हाट इज द इंस्पिरेशन कि आपको ऑथर बनना, ये आइडिया कब आपके दिमाग में आया या उसके पीछे इंस्पिरेशन क्या था?
It's not that I wanted to be an author per se. So what I did was I used to write. Since my early teen, and when I was in school, college, I used to write starting from the wall magazines to actually printed magazine. We used to edit and publish what we used to call in Calcutta Little Magazine. And since then, we writing and was in. I was used to it, but later on, I also started writing plays and stuff like that. But the thing is that I never. Most of my writing was in Bengali, so I wrote in Bengali, my mother tongue, and I also wrote in English. Several plays are in English, but the thing is that my plays. I published 4 books of plays, but they're all in Bengali from publishers in Kolkata. So this Dwapar Katha, which was published by HarperCollins, is, you can say, my first book in English. So this is my 5th book to whatever I have written. So that's kind of, so inspiration I cannot pinpoint really, but I've been into it since my childhood days.
ओके, तो देयर आर ऑलरेडी सो मेनी बुक्स इन महाभारत के ऊपर ऑलरेडी बहुत सारे बुक्स लिखी जा
Right.
चुकी है, तो व्हाई अनदर वन?
Okay. So first of all, I'd like to tell you that I didn't have the intention of writing a book on Mahabharata, really. Okay. So what I did was about 10 years ago, 2014, I started doing a podcast about Mahabharata. So I used to do a radio show, just like you're doing a show, but not on the internet. It was actually a radio show here in New Jersey. And there I thought that, okay, I used to do talk shows, interviews, and stuff like that. But then I thought that, okay, why not tell the stories of Mahabharata? Because I'm hooked with Mahabharata from a very childhood age. I love Mahabharata. And so what I did was I started telling the stories in English with the aim to reach out to the young generation, my kids' generation, my children's generation, that, they have missing out, especially kids in this country. And I later found out that in India too, that they miss out this wonderful piece of literature and this our heritage, which is the Mahabharata. So I started telling the stories, and then what happened is one of my colleagues, his name is Avi Ziv, and he is by birth an Israeli. He's an Israeli Jewish person. So he also is a musician, is a sound engineer. He said, I can help you. Let's work together. So then he started doing the sound design, sound engineering, and all that stuff, and also the music, the background score of the podcast. And by the way, podcast, you are doing this video podcast, but podcast is actually the technical term. It is actually an audio file. So we wanted to do the audio thing. It's not the video part of it. So it was mostly in an audio file, and we started doing the podcast. And gradually, when we started it, it was not very popular in India, because in India, podcast itself was very new that time. It was just coming up, and but still, we started gradually. The popularity was growing, and then when podcast started catching on in India, it kind of exponentially started growing. And what happened was, there was, I mean, obviously, multiple times we had media articles, in newspapers and other places. And so people started to know more about it. And then HarperCollins contacted me. So HarperCollins contacted me and said, we like the podcast, and we think it would be great if we can make it into a book. So are you interested? I said, well, this is a good opportunity. I mean, maybe this book can serve as an companion to the podcast, and also because the podcast, my target was that to reach out to the new generation, and in a very simple language, very simple, easy to understand language, and in a dramatic form, in a not going into much description, but more dialogues, such that the inner conflicts of the characters come out. So that's what I was focusing on. And I said that, okay, this can be a new kind of a book compared to the existing books, because most of the existing books are very pedagogic, in better, I mean, very, the language is very difficult sometimes. That's why the young generation doesn't like those books. And also other books, those are that are there, which are better, but they are like reinterpretations of the story. Okay, so they are going into, each character maybe, and developing it into a different story. So that kind of thing. So I wanted to stick to a different, just the plain and simple Mahabharat, and tell that story in a simple way. And I thought that this can be a new book, especially to reach out to the new generation, to the kids of the new generation. And I'm thankful to HarperCollins for bringing out this book. And so far, what I've heard from from people of your generation, that they are accepting it, they are liking it, and just like they like the podcast. And I feel really blessed to be able to reach out to your generation.
ओके, तो सर इससे पहले कि हम थोड़ा डेप्थ में जाएँ महाभारत की, मैं चाहता हूँ कि आप महाभारत को डिफाइन करें अपने पर्सपेक्टिव के हिसाब से कि आप महाभारत को किस नज़रिए से देखते हो?
Okay, a very good question. I mean, because to many people, Mahabharata is different. Some people treat it as itihas, as history. Some people treat it as a religious text. Uh, I look at Mahabharata as a piece of literature, is a wonderful piece of literature. Whether it actually happened in the past or not, I don't know. Maybe it happened, maybe it didn't happen, but that's not of concern to me. Mahabharata, the text on its own, has is so rich, is so powerful. It can influence us in so deep ways that very few texts in the world can do that. And it's not only one of the oldest epics in the world, it's the largest epic in the world. And people have been, that's why this Mahabharata has been surviving for so long, and people appreciate it. So I look at it from a literature point of view, as the story, the characters. Being a playwright, the characters interest me a lot, because none of the characters are without flaws. They have flaws in them. They have their own deficiencies, and at the same time they are very rich, they are very strong. So that's the way I look at Mahabharata, and it is and it will always be my favorite text.
ओके, तो देयर इज़ अ बिलीफ सिस्टम, एक मिथ कह सकते हैं आप, कि अगर हम महाभारत को अपने घर पे रखेंगे तो बुरी चीज़ें होंगी, जैसे लड़ाई झगड़े।
As in my house, multiple different editions from my childhood days. My mother used to read Mahabharata. My so it's always been there. Nothing happened. Okay, and so I cannot say anything about people's beliefs. I mean, if certain people believe it that way, it's okay. But I think having Mahabharata in the house, if even if there is a family feud, even if there is a family, it happens in all families. If in all families there's sometimes disagreements happen and things like that happen. Maybe that time, if you go and read the Mahabharata, it will give you ways to deal with that problem. Okay, so keep Mahabharata in your library or in your desk somewhere, and if a family problem happens, go and read it. Maybe you will find that there is a solution. So uh, I personally don't believe in that, but well, people have a lot of different kinds of beliefs, and they believe what they believe.
ओके, तो अगर मैं आज बात करूँ आज के समय की बात करें, तो महाभारत को हुए मतलब कितना टाइम हो गया कि
If you're talking about the text, okay, there are two things. I mean, are you treating the Mahabharata as a story when it happened, or is it the question is about the Mahabharata text? Okay, what is your question? What is it the question about?
एज अ
Text.
टेक्स्ट?
So the text, the historians have a little debate about it. Some say that it happened. They say that the full Mahabharata happened in bits and pieces. So the stories started coming in, and then they developed into the full story. Somewhere between, if I recall the dates correctly, somewhere between 400 BCE, that means which is BC, as we used to call that, and after Christ, AD, about 300 AD. Between that time, so it's a long period. Between that time, the Mahabharata texts were written, and as you know that some even say that some people have even argued that it's even older, but really, because as you know that India has a very the written history of India does not exist that much. Okay, we don't have much of written history about India, especially of the past. And Mahabharata, and just like other scriptures, even like the Vedas and others, it was Shruti. That means it used to be passed down by oral tradition. They used to tell the stories to the next generation, and that's how it spread. So we don't have a written record really, but that's what the historians and pundits, that's what the time period they think when it was written. But there are several different versions of Mahabharata all over the world, India, all over India and outside India. I mean, in Southeast Asia, there are other all countries there where they have their versions of Mahabharata there. And so, if you are aware of this, in Pune, there is this institute called Vandarkar Oriental Research Institute. They had a long project in trying to, collate all the different versions of Mahabharata and come out with the most common stream. And that's called the Bori critical edition of the Mahabharata, and which people in some sense can say that's an authentic text. So we cannot really pinpoint a date, but that's the kind of period when people think when the text happened, text started forming and completed.
ओके, तो अगर मैं बात करूँ रामायण की और महाभारत की, रामायण और महाभारत में दोनों में हनुमान जी का ज़िक्र आता है। तो व्हाट आर द अदर कनेक्शंस जो हमें दोनों में कॉमन
Yeah,
दिखाई देते हैं?
this is very interesting because in the full Mahabharata text, uh, Ramayana is included. Okay, Ramayana, in fact, is a part of Mahabharata. Although chronologically, Ramayana happens is during the Treta Yuga, and Mahabharata happens during the Dwapar Yuga, which is after the Ramayana. Okay, so that's why it's interesting that the Mahabharata includes the story of Ramayana, and but in my book, and most of the abridged editions will not go into the details of the full Ramayana there, because that Ramayana is not really exactly the same as the Ramayana that we read. um, but so what happens is, because it is said that Hanuman is Amar, right? He can never die, he lives forever. So obviously, whatever age it is, Hanuman still exists. So maybe if you believe in that, Hanuman still exists today, as of today. So Hanuman, that's why appears also in Mahabharat, and you have it in the story. In fact, I have an episode in the book where Bhim meets Hanuman, his brother, because both are Pavan Putra, and so they meet and in an interesting, funny situation, and that's how the Hanuman exists in both of the places. And there, Hanuman says that because of this boon or var given to him by Ram and Sita, he lives forever.
ओके, तो अगर मैं बात करूँ जो हस्तिनापुर के जो राजा थे, शांतनु, उनके 2 बेटे थे, जो अंबिका और अंबालिका थी। उन्होंने विचित्रवीर से शादी क्यों की? मतलब उसके पीछे की क्या वजह थी?
First of all, let me tell you, when you said two sons, actually, of Satyavati, two sons were born, Chitrangad and Vichitravirya. But Chitrangad died early age, so he was killed in a battle. So Vichitravirya was there, and they were looking for a bride for Vichitravirya, because the the dynasty has to keep on living, has to keep on prospering. And since Devabrata, he Vishma, he promised not to marry, he will never marry, he will remain celibate forever. So they needed to get only the candidate was Vichitravirya. So the episode where the king of Kashi, he was getting his three daughters, Amba, Ambika, and Ambalika, married in a Sayamvar, and that time Bhishma goes, because the the Kauravas, or they were not invited. They were not, Hastinapur was not invited to this Sayamvar, because there was some you know um, mistrust among the two and some animosity between the two kingdoms. So, yeah, but Bhishma then went and grabbed all three of the princes from there, Amba, Ambika, and Ambalika, to the palace, to Hastinapur. And then Amba says that, I'm supposed to actually, I have already accepted King Shalya as my husband. So technically, I mean, even I'm not married, but as far as I'm concerned, I'm already his. So then Bhishma and Satyavati sends her back, and she is being rejected, and so on and so forth. And we know that story. That's the entire story of Shikhandi and all that stuff, which happens later on. In fact, incidentally, I have written a play on Shikhandi also, where this entire story is there. And then Ambika and Ambalika were both being given marriage to Vichitravirya. Okay. But then again, Vichitravirya died too, and they had no children, and so then the story goes in another direction.
ओके, तो महाभारत की जब भी बात होती है तो कर्ण और अर्जुन की बात होती है, तो मैं चाहता हूँ कि आप हमें बताएं कि दोनों में से ग्रेटेस्ट वॉरियर कौन था?
Difficult question. Um, how do you judge who's the greatest? It's very difficult to judge. Both had very good training. Both were very well, you know, endowed with all kinds of weapons, blessed by their, in the case of Karna, by Surya, his father, and in the case of Karna, by Indra, and also by others. Now, but if you look into the narrative of the Mahabharata, you see Karna and Arjun fought against each other three times. Okay, one when the Kauravas were, defeated by the um, Gandharvas. Okay, and then second time was during the when the Kauravas went to steal the cows from Virat, king of Virat, and the third was Mahava in the Kurukshetra. Both the first two times, Karna was defeated. I mean, solidly by Arjun. Okay, so if you look into the so even if you look into the history after when the actual fight is happening in the Kurukshetra, Karna was still defeated. But Karna had with him few weapons, and Krishna was always very careful about Karna because he knew that the only person who can kill Arjun is Karna. So he knew that the Bhishma don't they won't kill Arjun even if they have the capability. They are not going to kill him. But Karna has no such qualms about it. He promised to Kunti that you'll have. I'll except for Arjun, I won't kill anybody, and he didn't do it. So Krishna knew that Karna can still kill him. So the first time Indra came as dressed as a Brahmin and tried to get his kavach and kundal, from him and then, but Karna was smart too. He was advised by his father that if Indra comes to you, ask for the Ekagni weapon. So he had this Ekagni weapon with him, which if he used it, it would kill him. I mean, kill whoever it is targeted to. So Krishna knew about it. Okay, and that's why during the war he sends Ghatotkach to fight Karna, and then Karna had to use that weapon against Ghatotkach, and he was left with nothing. So Krishna had knew that it was only Karna. But if you look into the, if you calculate the score between um, Arjun and Karna, Arjun wins. I mean, so we can't say who's the better warrior, but the results show that Arjun was better.
ओके। तो करण की अगर बात हुई है, तो हम करण को दानवीर करण के नाम से भी जानते हैं। काफ़ी दानवीर थे वो। और लेकिन दूसरा आर्गुमेंट ये भी है कि जब द्रौपदी का वस्त्रहरण हो रहा था, उस टाइम पे उसने कुछ अब्यूज़िव वर्ड भी कुछ कहा था। ये का एक दूसरे से क्लैश कर रही है। आप बता सकते हैं कि ये क्यों हो रहा है? मतलब एक तो उसकी पर्सनैलिटी कई जगह अच्छी लग रही है, कई जगह बुरी लग रही है, ऐसा क्यों?
So the weakest point of Karna is, I mean, as I told you at the very beginning, the beauty of Mahabharata is that the characters have flaws in them. Karna is that classical tragic hero. Okay, he was, left to die by his mother when he was just born, and then he gets, saved, rescued by Adhirath, his father, and then becomes a great warrior. But then again and again, multiple times he has been, you know um, denied of his rights because of his lineage, because of his father. Of I mean, he was not a kshatriya. He was things like that. It was caste issues were there. Um, but Karna had a problem, and that problem, I think, again, it's my interpretation. I know there are many people who love Karna, but Karna had problem was he was very arrogant. Aham. Okay, he had this huge aham in him, and pride and arrogance, which was possibly his greatest weakness. Because he was being rejected, that kind of fueled his anger and his passion, and then he was insults. Each of these insulted stress kind of cumulated. It was had a cumulative effect in Karna, and that was so bad that he kind of almost was not participating in the Kurukshetra war, because earlier Bhishma insulted him so much, abused him so much, that he was so angry that he says, as long as Bhishma is alive, I'm not going to fight. And Bhishma, not alive, and Bhishma is, he has self wish. Unless he wishes himself to die, he won't die. That means, technically, I mean, theoretically speaking, Karna would have never been in the war. And Duryodhan was, I mean, when Duryodhan heard this, he was like, he was hitting his head. What did his friend do? But it was his arrogance was possibly the weakest point of Karna. He lied to his guru, to Parashuram, that he is, a Brahmin, and when he went to go and get the training. So these are the flaws which possibly made Karna what he is. And that's why sometimes we feel that, okay, I have so much sympathy for Karna, but still, why does he do this? Why is he behaving like this? There is reason for it. I mean, the way he's brought up and all that stuff, the insults, he has been facing it all along. And only and the tragedy is at the end, he discovers, like almost like a Shakespearean play, that he discovers that his mother comes to him and says that, um, I'm your mother, you are the firstborn of the Pandavas. What a tragedy. I mean, fantastic tragedy. I mean, uh, all Bengalis know this famous poem by Rabindranath Tagore. He wrote the Karna Kunti Sambad. It's actually like a poetry drama of between Karna and Kunti conversation. It's so touching, so humbling of that story. So I think I answered it, and but the question is, we all feel for Karna, but Karna had his flaws.
ओके। तो आई एम क्यूरियस, मतलब अभी रिसेंट अभी अभी दिमाग में आया कि शकुनी की मौत कैसे हुई होगी?
Shakuni was killed later on by whom? By, I think, Nakula Sahadev, I don't remember, I can check. But he was killed on the 17th, 16th, 17th, almost at the end of the war. He was killed. I mean, almost unceremoniously. I mean, he was killed. I mean, it just mentions that. I can check and tell you later, but it is, I think, most likely Nakula Sahadev, somebody kills him. So he dies there, Shakuni, in the war.